Hello and welcome to another episode of ISO 400. I am your host, Julius Motal. This week we hear from Sarah Pannell, a documentary photographer from Australia who's worked on several projects in a number of different countries. And she just published her book, Sheh-hear, which looks at change in Istanbul. And we hear more about that project, what it's like to publish your first book, and more in this episode, so we hope you enjoy. And as always, our music is provided by Yuki Futami, a New York-based jazz musician. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoy. So, welcome to ISO 400. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, of course. I'd like to start with your recently published book, Şehir. Congrats on that.
Yep. Thank you.
So it's a book about Turkey, about Istanbul?
Yeah, Istanbul.
How did you get the idea for this project, and what was the process like working on it over a period of time?
I guess first went to, I was in Istanbul when I first went to Europe as like a 19-year-old, so about 8 years ago. And I was just there with like my best friend and spent only like 8 days or something. So it wasn't much. It was just like a little taster. Mm-hmm. But I loved it, and I was sort of just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till I can get back to Turkey and actually be able to see more of Turkey, but back to Istanbul. It was just sort of a city that really had an effect on me. And then, so I went back last year, obviously, when I saw you, and I was there kind of on and off over about a period of around 3 months, but I went off and did other travels and came back and forth. And I guess just over those, I probably spent maybe a month all up in Istanbul, which is not that long. It's obviously from a foreigner's point of view, it's only like I felt after those weeks it added up, I felt like I was really getting a nice idea of Istanbul, but that's definitely from an outsider's point of view, obviously, like not someone who lives there and knows it that well. But it's just kind of become one of those places that I just feel really close to. I don't know if that sounds strange, but
no, not at all.
It's definitely one of my favorite cities that I've spent time in, but at the same time it's obviously going through it's quite a turbulent time, and I feel like I was there exactly a year ago. I was there when like the May 1 protests were on last year, so and I feel like I've got quite a few friends there, and I've seen sort of what people are going through and what the city's going through, and the country, I guess, as well. But I guess I just felt from because I'd spent quite a while there taking photos, like just sort of wandering the streets and taking it all in, I felt like I needed to put something together that sort of represented my time there. And I feel it's a bit hard to sum up, and I've got a really good friend actually who has been living there the last year, who's from Melbourne as well. He's from Australia, but he has been living there and working as a writer and photographer, and he's had a really tough time there and sort of has like a bit of a love-hate relationship with the city. So I thought it was kind of he actually wrote the foreword for me for the book. And so that was sort of a really big help to have him help contribute to how it ended up. And I think his point of view really helped alongside mine. He kind of understood what I was trying to represent through the images, and to try and
You there?
a lot going on. Yeah, I don't know if that sums it up that well, but I just I guess I wanted to I'm not someone who's in a position to represent the people of Istanbul and show what the city is like, but I felt I was in a position to show it as, from my point of view and how I see it, and how it's like a really beautiful place, but there's also a lot of not so beautiful things as well.
Did you go
maybe
into
that's representative of sorry.
No, it's okay. Did you go into Istanbul thinking, I'm going to do a book, or did the idea come for it after you had spent time there?
Definitely after. I went to Turkey sort of out of wanting to produce some body of work, and I spent most of my time in sort of the southeastern region, sort of southeastern, like right down near the Syrian border, like along those border towns. And that was sort of what I more saw that as something that I really wanted to explore and probably produce a body of work, which I sort of have done, but it's still in the works and it's definitely not finished. It's sort of definitely a work in progress.
Yeah.
So I was sort of more focusing on that, and Istanbul was just sort of a side project. But I guess, yeah, like maybe a couple of months later, once I was back in Melbourne and going through all my images, I just saw this kind of develop, I guess, and felt that I had enough to do something for the time being. But at the same time, I would definitely want to go back, maybe shoot. I'd love to go back to Istanbul. But yeah, it was definitely an afterthought. It was sort of like, I think I've got something here. So that's sort of how that came about.
I've seen some images from the book online, and looking at your work, overall, I've noticed that there's a strong attention to color. You shoot mostly in color, it seems, and at a very wide perspective. With your street photo, it seems to be as much about the people and the place itself. And I'm wondering how did you develop that style? What drew you to that, as to say, closer, tighter shots?
I guess it's sort of just I always like to take in to include as much detail as possible, but also be able to involve a lot of different objects and elements. Like I totally love, an up close perspective as well. And I think that can work nicely, but at the same time, I often just like to try and include more of the scene. And from a street point of view, I guess, like street photography style, I guess. I feel like maybe I started off originally, like when I first started shooting, I was maybe shooting in more of a traditional street manner. But I've kind of slowly I probably have stepped back from shooting people so much, even though there are people that appear in my images, but I definitely kind of am more interested in the trying to identify the effects of people rather than straight up photographing people. Like I like to see this sort of like human influenced landscapes and that sort of thing. So I guess that's sort of plays into the way that I see things and what I would want to capture. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think it's just that's how I like to take in a scene. Like if I see something, it's sort of maybe it's just that I'm generally shooting on the same camera, and it's just what I like to fit into the shot. But I've always shot on prime lenses. I don't ever like using any type of zoom lens, and so I feel like I just if it's not wide enough, I'll move backwards. Like you just. I never crop my images afterwards, really. Like everything's as I shoot it. I try to be as I'm not like that much of a purist, but I prefer I don't like heavy cropping afterwards. I feel like you just see it as it is, and you know how it's going to turn out when you look through the viewfinder. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite focal length? Like what's in your bag now when you go out and shoot?
I generally I kind of bounce between two cameras I shoot on. Well, it's changed a bit since I was in Turkey, but I shoot mainly on a Mamiya 7, so and that's just with my 80mm lens, so that never changes. I've used other lenses, but that sort of is my stock standard lens, and that does everything I need. I guess in 35mm terms, it's equivalent to like a 43mm, I think. So that's perfect for me. It does everything I need it to do. Right. I never need to change it, so it's like perfect for. Like it fulfills all my landscape needs, but then at the same time you can shoot closer things as well. It's the best lens. I love it. So I wouldn't change that. And then in terms of if I'm shooting 35mm, that would just be probably around the same focal length actually. So I never really shoot that like much wider than that. And yeah, I have a pretty simple setup. I'm not one to change. I feel like once you've worked out what works for you, you just stick to it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Going back to when you were starting in photography, I read somewhere that you started around 2006, 2007. You were on a trip to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
What got you interested in photography, and then how did you find your way to street photography?
I was in like second year university,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to the Netherlands on like a study exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went away for I had like about 7 months in Europe. And I was studying international relations at the time. I did a like international studies like undergraduate degree, and I just found myself over there with like some terrible little point and shoot like digital camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was traveling around, and it was my first big trip. I'd traveled overseas before, but it was sort of the first big sort of solo trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I just worked out pretty quickly that I was really enjoying taking photos, and it never occurred to me really till that point. And sort of once I got home, I was like, oh man, like I really like taking photos, but none of the photos were any good. Like they were all pretty bad,
Yeah.
but I could kind of see, like even from Turkey, I remember the shots that I took in Istanbul was sort of, the like early stages of me
Mm-hmm.
picking up things and noticing things. And like my friend that I was traveling with for a little bit, she was like, oh, maybe you need to look more into this. Like you're really enjoying it. So I kind of just got back and started like, I had no idea. I was completely I had no formal training like
Sure.
that. So I sort of just started, I kind of went from there. I finally got like a little bit of a better camera, and
Mm-hmm.
I finished that course the year after,
Mm-hmm.
and then I enrolled, like I applied for a art school, like a photography school here in Melbourne, and got in, and then so as soon as I finished that degree, I went straight into another one. So
Very nice.
that's how that happened.
And so then you got the photo bug, you enroll in art school, and how did you segue into street photo as opposed to other genres?
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
That was just always what I was interested in shooting. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was from the start. Like it was always, once I was back in Melbourne, it was sort of like I was back in my hometown, and I was sort of then obviously experimenting with photography, and was like, oh, I want to go out and take photos. And I guess it was always street was what I just was interested in, and what I was
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, this is kind of cool. Like always sort of natural light. Like it was just over maybe a year or two that I started to see things more, I guess, like things would stand out. And I was like, oh, wow, that's sort of, and, everyone goes through different phases when they start out with photography. And there's all the cliches, and you fall into the same little patterns. But, I guess that's just what I was intrigued by. And and also at the same time, it's kind of like something fun that you can do in your home city. Like you can go out anytime, particularly obviously if the light's nice or something, you can go out and it's just easy to do. So, I guess that's how that developed.
And I know for my photography, I've definitely gone through cliches. Like there was a big decisive moment period when I learned what that was.
Oh, totally.
How did you eventually push through those cliches and sort of find your own voice and find your own style?
Maybe it was probably while I was at RIT, so that was the school I was at.
Mm-hmm.
In my second year of that course, so in 2011, I actually went overseas again. I went to the States to do a study abroad again. I kind of wasn't really enjoying, to be honest, like my second year of doing photography. Feeling challenged. I wasn't really enjoying what I was producing. I was just sort of in a bit of a rush, and kind of like I'd learnt so much the previous year. Like I mainly wanted to do that course because I wanted to sort of get the technical know-how and sort of start to understand the photography industry. But then by second year I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like, everything I was producing for assignments were just, I hated what I was doing, and I was like, I'm not enjoying this. And there's no point doing photography if you're not liking what you're shooting. And then kind of to push myself out of that, I was like, oh, I'll just have to go overseas again. So I went to the States, to California, and sort of that was when I started shooting that's kind of when I transitioned to film, and I started shooting medium format, and America just changed everything. I don't know, like traveling around there and the people I met there, and sort of the course I was doing, even though I was just at a state university, the darkroom practice and the teachers that I met there were incredible, and it sort of completely changed my perspective on things. And I was just really inspired by the American landscape, and so that kind of revived me, I think, and changed the way that I like shooting sort of street stuff. And I guess it was more that at home I felt like I had to shoot particular things and try and find, like, I guess I was probably shooting things that were quite cliche, like in a street style or whatever. But then once I was in the States, I was somewhere new, and it kind of made me look at things differently. I don't know if that makes sense entirely.
It does.
That's probably what pushed me past that point. Yeah.
And were you where in the States? You were in LA or where?
I was in San Jose, Bay Area. Yeah, which was cool. Like I was a bit unsure about it when I decided to go. It was sort of like everything was all really last minute, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this San Jose place. And then it ended up being amazing. Like the people I met there it was so cool, and being so close to San Francisco was just like a life changer. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time there, and the light, I don't know, around the Bay Area, it's just like the light there. Like I was there for the fall semester, so from like August, and I guess that area kind of gets a late summer, and the weather was always so good, and I just was constantly feeling inspired to shoot, and it was and it was amazing.
What were some of your favorite places to photograph in the States? You said you had traveled around a bit.
Yeah, all of California. Like I never really thought California would be a place that would blow me away, but it was, I guess, all of like Northern California in particular was amazing. I went up to like Oregon and Washington, Portland, and sort of did a bit of a road trip through there. And then probably the biggest standout though would have been the South. Like did a road trip with a friend and went through all the southern states. Started in Texas. That was probably the most interesting part for me, and so different after doing New York and doing San Francisco, and LA, and like the big cities. Obviously, it's to go there. It's just like whoa, it's a completely different part of the country, but it's incredible. I'm such a like going to New Orleans, and it's just like a massive eye opener, and such a different part of the States, and a really important area to see, I think. But so probably the South was the most interesting for me.
And did your time in the States help you see your home city in a new way? Did it help you photograph better back home?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it had the exact desired effect, I think. I got home and I sort of, like I grew up in, like Melbourne's a pretty big city in terms of like area size. It's like huge metropolitan area, really spread out. The suburbs just go so far out, and I'm from the eastern suburbs and from quite a nice like middle class area, I guess, very comfortable suburban area. And I got back and I was living back at home with my parents for a little while before I moved out, and it was obviously a bit of a, coming back from the States and then moving back in with your parents and being sort of stuck in suburbia was a bit of, I was like, oh gosh. But that's when I started photographing Melbourne, like the Melbourne suburbs, and that sort of, then I spent a whole year shooting that, and that's what I did for my final folio work for university. I guess maybe the idea of the whole American suburbs inspired me, I guess, to reflect on kind of how unique Australian suburbia is, I guess. It's something that was always so mundane, so standard, and it's like what I grew up with, but then started seeing it in a different light, and color wise, like it's
Yeah.
You see some strange things. That's so I think that's how America definitely influenced me being back at home. I was started seeing things in a better light, I guess. And I see that sort of, I did that for most of 2012, and I still shoot towards that. Like, I kind of produced a book for it, but that was just for what I had to do for class. But I sort of see that as something that over the next 5-10 years I'll keep working on. I'll just keep shooting for it, and then maybe eventually put something together. But yeah.
And what drew you to color photography over black and white?
I'm a color person. I see everything in color. I occasionally will shoot black and white, and I can see the beauty of it, and I do. So, like, I have, some favorite photographers that are black and white shooters, but I can't, like, I'll get a black and white. If I shoot a roll of black and white, I'll get it back, and there'll often be, sometimes there'll be images that you're like, oh wow, that looks really good in black and white, but then sometimes I'm just like, that would be so much better in color. Like, just for me, I see things, I just often will be like, well, I'm not going to take a photo of that if it's going to be in black and white, because it defeats the way that, if it's something that's like a vibrant scene. I don't know. I think there's a real art to black and white, and there's absolutely a place for it, and some people work really well. But for me, I'm just too concerned with color.
And speaking of favorite photographers, who are some that have influenced the way you see things, and who have like good work that you really enjoy looking at?
I guess in terms of, there's obviously some really given in terms of color. When I was first getting into photography and investigating different artists, there's like the likes of like Eggleston and Stephen Shaw, for example, who were like major influences.
Yeah.
That's kind of obviously quite a given, and lots of people would say the same thing. But so that's what I'd say in terms of like classic photographers, like just as two that off the top of my head. But in terms of like more contemporary, and who probably like just some that pop into my head at the moment would be Alexander Gronsky.
I haven't heard of him.
Are you familiar?
No.
I'm not 100% sure where he's from. I know he's based in Latvia at the moment, I think, because I was just looking online the other day at a new book that he's brought out. But his work is incredible, and he would definitely be an example of someone who I'm sort of, with my work I'm doing at the moment, I think of his work often, and he just blows me away. Max Pinkers, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his last name. I think he is Belgian. His work blows me away as well. Both photographers work very much with colour, but it's not their thing. Like, they're just incredible documentary photographers that are very good at what they do. I'm trying to think who else. That's sort of, as soon as you said that, those are the two names that jumped into my head. Trying to think who else. I'm really bad with this.
It's okay.
In advance. They're the two that came to mind, though. That's for sure. Yeah.
So you were recently in Hong Kong. Was that for the project you've been working on?
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah.
What brought you there originally?
Initially, my aunt and uncle are actually, I guess, expats who live between Hong Kong and Melbourne. My uncle's a pilot, so he's been based in Hong Kong for 20 years. And so they've always lived, like, they have a house up there, and they sort of move between. And so I always, like, growing up, I always heard about Hong Kong, and it was always one of those places that, like, most of my family had been to. But I didn't really know that much about it, I guess. And I didn't go for the first time until 3 years ago. And it was exactly 3 years ago that I sort of was just like, I'm just going to go to Hong Kong for a month. And I just went. Like, I didn't really know what to expect. And some people will be like, why would you go to Hong Kong for a month? Like, it's just a city, you can't really spend a month there. But I just, I don't know, I loved it. It's such a chaotic place. Have you been before?
I haven't yet.
No.
I'd like to.
It's yeah, it's incredible, and like it's definitely not a place that's for everyone. Like I can see why people would not cope with spending a lot of time there because it is so like densely populated, and it's just a pretty intense place to be. But from a visual point of view, because of where my uncle, like where the house is that I was staying at, it's quite far out of the main part of the city. So it's sort of, you know, like majority of Hong Kong's concentrated like right around Victoria Harbour, sort of in Kowloon and then Hong Kong Island. So that's where it's really built up, and that's what sort of like the iconic, all sort of the postcard shots of Hong Kong are the harbour and off the peaks. It's like where you just see a million skyscrapers, and that's sort of what people think of when they think of Hong Kong. But each time I go there, I stay at my uncle's place, and it's sort of right up in the hills, quite far away, quite far removed. And even though like a lot of people do live around there, it's definitely not somewhere that a lot of people go to, I think, when they visit. Like if you just go for 4 days in Hong Kong, most people don't make it out there. And so from staying there, and sort of it's so beautiful around there, and sort of you get this bus ride into the city, and it takes a little while, but it's just like through these winding hills, and you see all these like little fishing villages, and I don't know, it's just a crazy place to be. And so I ended up spending a month there and shooting quite a lot. And then I went back a year ago on the way to Turkey, and then just back a few weeks ago again. So after sort of 3 trips, I can kind of see a series of like that's come together that's sort of focused on that other part of Hong Kong that isn't what everyone expects. Because like something, I'm not sure what the statistic is, it's probably like a Wikipedia statistic, but something like 70% of Hong Kong is like forest and is like national park, you know? So it's not, there's all these parts, that are completely like lush and green, and it's not just a concrete jungle. So sort of that's pretty much what I've been trying to focus on with that. And now I'm sort of working towards a publication for that, I think, towards the end of the year. That's kind of the current plan.
Very nice.
Yeah, this last trip was really good. I sort of went over just to like shoot for 2 weeks, and I even had a car for a little while, which is a bit of a crazy thing to do in Hong Kong. Driving there is not ideal, but it kind of allowed me to, even though the public transport there is incredible and it's like so efficient, it was good to have a car to kind of get to some weirder places that would be a little difficult to get to with a camera. And it also allowed me to shoot at night, which was something I hadn't really been able to do before, because it's a bit, other times I've been there on my own, and it's sort of a bit hard to go out at night when you're like catching buses and go out with a tripod and everything. It's a bit harder. So it was really cool to go and drive around to like some strange sort of isolated parts of Hong Kong, like weird industrial areas, and I could get out and do some sort of like long exposures and stuff at night. So it was good that allowed me to do that. So I feel more confident that I've got a bit more of a better variety of images. So
now, is that the project on your website that's called Through the Haze, or? Yeah,
I need to change. Yeah, that's sort of, it's a very much work in progress. I put that work up sort of after I went the first time, and I've edited it down a little bit, but I probably should take it down for the moment because it's like a half done series. But yeah, that's sort of a taster, I guess.
Now, is that a working title? Is that the title?
No, it's definitely a working title. I need to change that. You've just reminded me that I need to.
Okay, good.
To alter that. Yeah, working title, but it'll change. It's not going to be called that, I don't think.
I've seen, too, that you're part of the Stroma collective.
Yeah, yes.
Could you...
It's taken a bit of we're a bit offline at the moment, to be honest. But yeah, no, but through that, it's a really good group of people to be involved with. We've just, the last few months that everyone's been a little crazy and nothing has happened. We haven't moved forward with it, but But Julian, did you?
I met him.
Yes. The night, when I met you, you met Julian.
Yeah.
That's how I know Julian through
Okay.
the internet, and then through forming that, and then we finally got to meet in Turkey, which was cool. Yeah.
Now, is it for Australian-based photographers? Like, what's the idea behind the collective?
No, I'm the only Australian-based. It's
okay.
we formed just over the internet, and most people, everyone has met at least one other person from the group. So it's sort of, we're like scattered around, like from Canada, Philippines, South Korea, London, Belfast.
Okay.
Moment, I think. Yeah. And Melbourne. Yeah. So it's a bit of an eclectic mix. Yeah. So that's been a good process. It's been over the last few years. We're hoping to get back on board the next few months. It's obviously everyone has their own schedules.
Of course.
It's so hard to make things happen. And a few of the guys have children and are just like really busy. And sometimes it's like, I want to work on this new blog post, and they're like, I've had a crazy week with the kids. It's not, it's sort of hard to make time, I guess. But yeah.
And outside of your Hong Kong project, what are you working on at the moment?
Do you mean like freelance work or
freelance and sort of passion projects?
Pretty, I guess, in terms of my personal work, and the Hong Kong thing is what's going to take up the next little while. That's sort of my main focus now. I had a show at the start of the year with some of my the work from Turkey, from sort of the southeastern part of Turkey, like that trip.
Yeah.
The time I spent down there. So I've sort of been working on that, but that's still, I see that as a work in progress as well. Like I had an exhibition for it, but it's something that I'll keep working on, and I hope to return to Turkey later this year. So I guess other than that, I actually work in Melbourne. I work at a photo lab, a film lab.
Oh, very nice.
So that's what takes up, at the moment, that's what takes up most of my week. But it's through that, it's very flexible, and I kind of work, any freelance work I have, I sort of mold around that job. And it's so good working there, because it's sort of like I'm every day surrounded by photography and film, and other like really great photographers. So we've got quite a good little community in Melbourne, pretty close-knit group of people who are sort of, all like a group of working photographers who all do their own thing, but then all sort of have something in common. And there's also sort of a really good book, like print scene, I feel, at the moment in Melbourne. It's really thriving. There's actually, just this weekend, there's been the Melbourne like art book fair has been on, sort of modelled off New York art book fair. First year they've done it at one of the sort of major galleries in the city, and I just went this morning actually, and it was insane. Like Printed Matter from New York was out, and so that was sort of like the base for it, and just the amount of people there and sort of the work and everything. Like it was cool to see a big mix of like print going on and, on offer in Melbourne, because I feel like Australia is sometimes, we're a bit behind the times. We get a bit left out compared to Europe and sort of the festivals that go on in the States and Europe. So it's really cool to see that happening in Australia. So that's sort of what I kind of spend a lot of my time on, is working like through the photo lab I work at, and then through there's like a photo book archive that I work with as well. I'm not sure if you've heard, I don't know if I told you about it when I met you, but Asia Pacific Photo Book Archive, that's based out of Melbourne. And it's sort of modelled off the Indie Photo Book Library, which is American. So that's sort of what I spend time on as well, working with that. It's like a physical library of photo books that's sent in from people from all over the Asia Pacific region. So I think there's definitely a really good, I think there's like a really good thing going on at the moment with books and with printing photography work, and like, like it's not people aren't content with just seeing things online. I think so many people are starting to print their own thing again, and just self-published books is really big. I don't know. There's definitely a good scene going on in Melbourne with it. I think it's sort of cool to see photographers take initiative and work at sort of wanting to produce stuff like that instead of just putting their stuff on a blog or like Tumblr or the website or whatever. It's just like nice to see people creating something that's you can hold on to.
Yeah.
I think I guess that's the main thing that I'm wanting to spend my time on at the moment. That's what I'm concerned about. Yeah.
I find, or at least it seems that there's less of a stigma with self-published photo books than there is, say, with like self-published novels or, collections of short stories. Do you have any thoughts on that? Why do you think that is?
I know what you mean. I think you're definitely right. I'm not sure. Maybe it's something to do with I don't have that much of an insight into the writing world and like what authors are like and what that sort of industry's like. But I guess maybe there's more legitimacy to a published author than. I don't know why it would be different, but I feel like maybe it's like, oh, you just self-published that novel, like who's read it? Like it might not make any sense.
Yeah.
Not produced through a larger publishing house, that it might lack legitimacy. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting point you make, actually. I haven't really thought about it like that. I think maybe with the photography book, I feel like it's a direct. I think there's like a direct correlation between artists wanting to, even if you only produce one photo book, for example, like you might literally print one. Yeah. It's kind of like you're producing, like it's that like little piece of art that, like doing a painting or something. It's sort of like you can just make one and it can be just for yourself, or you could print multiple copies, and it's sort of, it's like an extension of your computer screen. It's like, instead of just being like, here's my website, you then are like, you actually have something that's printed and tactile. Like I'm not sure if I'm making any sense, but I feel like it's, maybe it has more ground if, for the photo book, it makes more sense to be able to. I think. Sorry, let me start again. It's more justifiable printing it and producing it, even if it is just like a dummy, or if it is just like something that's really like lo-fi and zine-like. It makes it more legitimate. If that makes sense. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, it's an interesting point you make, though.
Yeah. So something I ask every photographer in these interviews. No, it's okay. If you could give one piece of advice to a street photographer who's just starting out, what would that piece of advice be?
I don't even consider myself a street photographer these days, but I think maybe this could probably apply to any type of photography, but I think maybe to shoot in a way that's comfortable to you. Like don't try to do something because you think that's what street photographers do, like a particular style of for example, being like, oh, I want to go up and shove a camera in someone's face and be really like, shoot in that particular way because you think that that's what's cutting edge, or like you think that that's like pushing the limits. Like shoot in a way that's like honest to yourself, I guess. Like what you think's representative of your own style. Like I feel maybe I've just seen people who I feel like are trying to like shoot in a particular way because they think that that's how they can get noticed or something. I know that that's easier said than done because it's kind of like something that takes a while to realize what's natural for you. But yeah, not trying to yeah, I'm not sure what the exact word I'm looking for, but yeah, shooting in a comfortable way, like not just trying to like what I'm trying to say. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, I probably answered the best I can.
No, it's totally cool. Well, thank you.
No worries.
So
sorry,
much. No,
I've made sense for you.
No, you did. You did. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
No worries.
It's been
Thanks
great.
So much for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for watching. This has been ISO 400. If you'd like to see more of Sarah's work, go to sarahpannell.com or follow her on Instagram at Sarah Pannell. That's Pannell. And if you like what we do, please hit subscribe down below and share this with your friends. Thanks so much and see you next time.